Hey everyone, welcome to the Wildrift Patch Note 3.1b, where we will be discussing the latest changes and how it affects the competitive meta. So this will be the last balance patch for 3.1. The next one will be at 3.2. Well, the next one will be 3.2, which is at May 11. Something to note. And then Elemental Rift will be coming back. It will still be a test phase, so it will not yet be our permanent mode. But they have two changes. So the first change is that after the first dragon is slain, the terrain will change. The map changes at first dragon before it was at the after the second dragon. So they made it at least 5 minutes earlier, which is okay, no problem. And then the next one will be the team who slays 2 dragons will be granted one of the powerful souls. So the dragon soul will be given after 2 dragons rather than 3 dragons. So they also made it at least 5 minutes faster. This would increase the dragon priority through the roof, since all you need is 2 dragons, and Dragon Soul will be attainable at the 10 to 11 minute mark, if assuming a team gets both of the dragons at the fastest possible time. So very interesting change for me. I think it's still like the 3 dragons for the soul rather than the 2 dragons for the soul. But I think Riot wants to limit test and test if this would be good, and how will it affect the current state of the games. This will change the meta because you could draft early game comps in order to get the soul ASAP. I think the best change is 5 minutes initial spawn, and then 4 minutes the next spawn, and then 3 dragons for the soul. I think that is the best solution, but Riot just wants to try if they make it at 2, because you could snowball the game really easily if you are able to get the soul at the soonest possible time. So next would be skins, Marauder Graves, Marauder Brand. Not a big fan of those skins, but it's okay. If you're a Brand and Graves fan, of course, you would always want more skins. So accessories, this is kind of cute. The Poro, Bilgewater Poro. Then new event, Join the Fluff, Bilgewater event at April 9. Then let's go to the champion changes. So first would be Blitzcrank. What did they do here? We intended to reduce Blitzcrank armor since we're giving him more engage potential. These were not included. Oh, I see. So they didn't. So they reverted the Blitzcrank armor nerfs. So that's why there's no change here, because they didn't see much difference. So Blitzcrank was spared from the Rito nerf. The next would be Darius. Attack speed per level nerf from 2.2 to 1.2. So 41 to 27. So that's a big nerf. So it's almost a dagger nerf. I think this is a 14% attack speed nerf, if I'm not mistaken. So they want his stacks. They want him to get full stacks in a slower manner rather than getting full stacks in 2 seconds in a team fight. Because if you use all your skills and you have high attack speed, you could easily get your full stacks, and then when Darius gets his full stacks, he could easily carry the team fight. So this is a decent nerf on this champion. Makes him have more counterplay into completing all his stacks. So next is Fiora. They buffed her passive from 2.5 to 3%. Then AD ratio of 4.5 to 5.5. So they want to make her vitals a more important part of her kit. Since in the late game, if you reach the late game, vitals are not that important because you could easily burst the opponent even though you're not hitting the vitals. But in the early game, it's very important since you don't have much damage yet. And then the next one would be the lunge from 4 to 3.5, and then the search rate from 3.5 to 3. So this is a 1 range nerf if you combine the 2.5s on her first skill. So makes the range of her first skill a lot closer than you expected. So not only did they make the dash lower, they also made the lunge range lower as well. If you're a Fiora main, you would probably be surprised when the patch hits that your lunges are not reaching your target, so you have to be a lot closer, which gives her more counterplay potential. Because before, you could poke with their lunge without any counterplay. Now they're putting some counterplay. When you lunge, your opponent could at least react, which is a good thing. But this is bad if you're a Fiora main, obviously, because this is quite a big nerf. Next would be Jhin. Fourth shot from uncapped to maximum of 1000 damage. I think this is a good nerf, especially for a jungle. You like this nerf on Jin because his fourth shot can do 1.5k damage onto the Baron, which is way bigger than your smite range, and your team will blame you because you lost to a Jin fourth shot and they don't know that it does more damage than your smite. This is good if you're a jungler. And I think it's 1k damage is still really strong. It's still as strong as smite. So if you could time it properly, you could still outsmite the opposing jungler. But the best thing here is that what people don't know about the Jin fourth shot on objectives, you could combine it with your smite. If you see the Baron at 2k HP, and then you see Jin's fourth shot, or you combine it with Jin's fourth shot, you could smite it at 2k HP. So the moment the fourth shot hits, hit smite, easy secure, easy win. So next, Kai'Sa, they buffed her third skill, which is very interesting. So 3-second buff, which is big for Kai'Sa, for someone who needs a lot of mobility in her kit for a short range champion. I'm very interested why they buffed Kai'Sa because she's still really strong in the solo queue and competitive meta. Not sure why they buffed her. And then looking at the next is a Lucian buff as well. I'm not so sure why Riot decided to buff these two champions because these two champions have been in the solo queue and competitive meta ever since 3.1 and has been highly prioritized by both solo queue and competitive teams. So not sure why they buffed them even more rather than buffing the other ADCs that have not been seeing some play like Tristana. Number one, Tristana. We haven't seen any Tristana for so long. Ashe. We've seen some Ashe, but it's not enough as compared to Kai'Sa Lucian. And what else? Saya. Saya is another champion that hasn't been seeing much love. And Caitlyn. So there are a lot of ADC champions that they could buff, but they decided to buff, let's buff the most meta ADCs right now, Kai'Sa Lucian. So I'm not sure. And I don't agree with this decision, but if you're an ADC main, you'll take it. Next would be Alpha Strike Mastery Nerf from 160 to 150. So they decreased the base damage by 10 and the attack damage. Ooh, this is quite big. They halved the scaling of, almost half the scaling of Alpha Strike, which would make his Alpha Strike a lot weaker when it gets to the later stages of the game. If you're a Mii main, this is a deserved nerf because Alpha Strike is broken because of the invulnerability rather than the damage that it just gives. So if you're a Mastery player, you could still wreak havoc in a team fight because the Alpha Strike takes 10 years and your opponents will not be able to see you as much. If you're able to get a reset, that's same thing. They just reduce the damage, which is good. For me, this is a good nerf because you want to depend on your auto attacks rather than depending on the Alpha Strike to be able to take down your target. Next is Olaf. They reduced his health cost from 75 to 72. Okay. 3 damage buff on Olaf on his third skill. Interesting. Okay. Nothing. This is nothing. Next, Rakan. They increased the mana at level 15. They increased it by 200. I don't think Rakan runs out of mana. I don't remember. I don't recall. I think this will be a bit better for the early game. But when it gets to the later stages of the game, it would still be the same thing. So not much. Next would be Seth. Seth got another nerf on his regeneration, made it a bit slower from 0.5 to 0.25, which affects the laning phase, but at the later stages, it will still be the same. And then the first skill as well got nerfed by 5 damage. So from 55 to 50, this is intended for his early game, since early game is still really strong, and he has a lot of regeneration in his kit. I think this is a deserved nerf. Seth should not be that strong in the laning phase, since Seth shines in the team fights when he can catch targets, when he can tank the opponents, etc. etc. He has a lot of team fighting kit. Making his laning phase a bit weaker is deserved to open up some counterplay. Then Yuumi buff. Ugh, I don't like Yuumi buffs, but here we are. So from 60 to plus 22 per level to 22 per level, 30% AP to 25 per level, and then 35% AP. So they buffed her passive and they gave it more mana as well. So from 12% max mana to 15% max mana. So they want to make her laning phase a bit stronger, especially with this buff on the first skill. So from 12 seconds to 9 seconds on the earlier levels. And then they decrease the mana cost from 70 to 50. So they want to make her laning phase stronger. I think if you're a good Yuumi player, her slinging phase is already strong if you know how to play her properly. Since the shield is super big and it's hard to counter the heals as well. If Yumi is back in the meta, this will be very stressful, especially if my opponent is a Yumi, because when I have a Yumi in my team, she always feeds. When I have an opponent that plays Yumi, I can't deal with it. So, interesting change if you're a Yumi main. This is really good for you. The next item changes. Banshee is getting a Loki buff. I think Banshees is already a good item, good 4th to 5th item, especially for AP junglers. The spell shield is really good. It gives magic resist as well. Now it gives more ability power and ability haste. So Banshee's Veil, Loki, a really good item for AP mages. The next Hextech Mega Drive, another buff for this item. So they really want to make Mega Drive a viable option for support. I could only see this as a 3rd item after the Ardent and Staff of Flowing Water. If you're an enchanter, this will most likely be more targeted for Morgana support and those more exotic supports. Leona, Alistar, etc., etc. Let's see if this will outperform the Zeeks or the Deadmans, etc., etc. So next, Joram's Fist. So all they did is they changed the component from Ruby Crystal to Longsword. This is more engaging since Longsword gives more damage. And if you're a jungler, this is actually a good change for you, because if you want to build Divine Sunderer first, now you won't get stuck with the Ruby Crystal first item. Ruby Crystal first item on a jungle is really bad because it makes your clear a lot slower. So now you could go Longsword and still complete the Divine Sunderer. So that's what's good about this change. So next is Mortal Reminder. They're giving it some love. Everyone's going Grudge. I think Mortal Reminder's Loki has always been the better item because of the anti-healing that it gives, especially with everyone building Death's Dance. Busted item. So from 40 to 45, good for those who build Mortal Reminder. Next is Triforce. They're finally giving some love to Triforce. Triforce has been, the priority of Triforce has been down ever since. Probably only built on Jackson Camille because it's super expensive. 3.4k. Why spend 3.4k on a Triforce if you can spend 3.1 and or 3k for Thunder Cleaver? So they're making it a more competitive late game scaling item. So from 20 to 25, and then the health they increases as well. So good buff onto the Triforce. Ghostblade, another buff. So this is a jungle buff for all champions that use Ghostblade that are in the jungle. This makes your roam a lot faster. And Loki, a Lee Sin buff, since Lee Sin always builds Ghostblade first. So Lee Sin, Jace, even Kha'Zix can build this. Rengar if you want to. So this opens a lot more options for the jungle. But there is a jungle nerf, which is the Rift Scuttler. So from 2,000 to 1.2k, which decreases the priority of the Scuttler. And personally, I think full clear is low-key the more OP clear than getting Scuttlers. Because once you full clear, you're already level 5 and you have your ultimate. Especially if you're like Eve, Camille, you have those champions that have strong ultimates. Full clear is a faster clear than getting the Scuttlers. This would increase the full clear for junglers. I think the Lee Sin, Rengar, Sinjals will still prioritize Scuttler because it's free gold, free XP. You don't have to always be reliant on Scuttlers right now. So overall, I think the patch is just a small patch because it's just the major patch will still be at May, as stated. Small buffs and nerfs. Biggest nerfs for Fiora and Darius. Then biggest buffs for, I think, Lucian. Kai'Sa is the biggest buff right now, which is very interesting. Kai'Sa and Yumi have the biggest buff right now. Decent patch, not the best. I don't agree, especially with the ADC changes, but with the other champions, I agree with. And that is it for our patch rundown, and I will see you guys next time. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out. Ciao, ciao. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.